Thursday.
Okay.
So,
All right. Let's get started. Welcome to the May meeting of the Rehoboth Beach Board of Adjustment. Start with the roll call. To my left.
William Pearlstein.
Jan Conacy.
Edie Heron.
Mark Saunders.
And Fred Townsend, Board Attorney.
And I am Barry Brandt. Okay. And was the meeting and public notice properly posted?
Yes, it was. I do not have my folder with me, but the agenda was posted on May 10th, amended and reposted on the 15th. Public notice and mailings and signing
I need a pen.
for
Oh, yeah, one.
number 0424-04. I can verify that all of it was
Okay, thank you. And I know we had some April correspondence for 53 Sussex. Has anything come in this morning? Okay, so no other. And I believe we have minutes to have reviewed and approved today, February, March, and April of 2024. So did everyone get a chance to review the minutes?
No.
No, I did not get the April.
No.
Time to do the April one.
Okay, can we defer approval of these minutes until next meeting? If you're okay with that? Okay?
We just got it.
Thank you. I understand that. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, this afternoon, the board has two cases on the calendar. One case is old that we started hearing in April, and we deferred it for the applicant to work with the architect to address the square footage and the design of the proposed house. The second case is a new case, and it's a request for variance of area related to use in a restaurant. In both cases today, the board will apply the quick check factors that Delaware law recognizes for Board of Adjustments. Under Delaware law, an applicant for an area variance must prove that the requirements create an exceptional practical difficulty. To determine whether an exceptional practical difficulty exists, the board must weigh the following four factors: the nature of the zone where the property lies, the character and use of the immediate vicinity, whether removal of the restrictions on the applicant's property would seriously affect neighboring properties and their uses, and finally, whether failure to remove the restrictions would create an exceptional practical difficulty for the owner in relation to the owner's efforts to make normal improvements to the property. These standards are satisfied only when the difficulties alleged by the owner are practical rather than theoretical and exceptional rather than routine. Everyone that wishes to speak today will be required to give their testimony under oath. I will ask Mr. Townsend to administer the oaths. We do not have a court reporter, so if at any time someone cannot hear anyone, we can stop. We're used to it. Just say, speak into the mic, and so we can get a recording later on, or a transcript. So please keep your voices up, speak into the microphone, no cross conversations during the meeting. And is anyone in the audience, I don't know how many people say, here to speak? Do you wish? Okay. Are you here for case number 2? Okay. And we'll swear you in at the proper time. And the properties surrounding the applicant's cases, they were properly posted, correct? Okay, thank you. After the applicants and public finish speaking, we will close the public participation, and then the board will discuss the case. We won't take any more public commentary. And I wanted to let everyone know that from time to time, you may see one of the board members looking at an electronic device or just looking at diagrams, and we are not doing any kind of communication to anyone else. Okay. I should have that on a recording. Okay, case number 1, 53 Sussex Street. Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you for this continuation of this case.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, Board of Adjustment, and happy Monday. This is a continuation of case number 0324-03. You'll recall that the last meeting, you had put some, a qualification, if you will, on the applicant to revise plans and resubmit with your recommendations. The applicant has submitted new plans for this application. I have provided you with a kind of standard markup document of what we normally provide in calculating square footages. It was the board's request, I believe, for 72 square feet. And I believe that the applicant has satisfied that. Of course, I will let the applicant speak and take the application from there.
Okay. There are no new building inspectors because it's still dated April.
Correct. The report was not revised other than to recognize and provide the markups and calculations from the plan that was originally submitted.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, may I ask you, were those on your page, on the pages that I have marked as 28 and 20 in what we were given, the new one? Because there's a lot of duplication in this application.
Yes.
There are many, many pages, almost 30 pages that are duplicate, and then some that are new, and nothing's dated. So I was trying to understand this. So your calculations are on which pages? Could
So
I ask?
it will only be one page.
Okay.
It will be a floor plan, and they should have red numbers on that floor plan.
Well,
It
my-
was-
My
it-
printer does not print in colors.
Well, mine does, so you tell me what, okay, I
could help
see it
us
as
out, Edie.
page 36, would
I
that
don't have
be-
any page numbers on my stuff. There's no page
No, I had
numbers.
to write them in because there were no page numbers. I wrote them down because I did a match of page by page and what was the same and what was different.
What does it look like?
Yeah, we're gonna have to take this slowly because, yeah, I too was confused with the submittal of the
Yes.
package.
Okay, so that's not it.
Okay,
That's
what,
not
go,
it.
if you have it printed out, you can start at, here's the place to start, I'll give you a marker. In my view, this is the marker toward the back
Got it.
Okay, I
of a
didn't print the
single
whole
one.
thing out.
On the original application, this logo was on a one-page set of numbers. So to me, that's page 27 of 59.
Starting there.
Okay, then the next page which is key in my view, and which is not included in what has been given to us today. I think you all want to have that handy when we talk. The next page is 28, which looks like this.
Is that
If you see red here, that's my red, but this is their new calculation.
Okay.
But this is not what they just gave us. They gave us some other things that are in the packet, but this part was not given to us again just now. And then page 29 is a schematic site plan.
Or
And
it
then,
says schematic sections?
no,
Oh,
looks
no.
like this. And then if you want to write the page numbers, because I may reference them later, because as you know, I've been through this anyway. And then page 30 looks like this, and it's I'm sorry, I should.
Okay, I'm with you, I'm following
Okay, three floors.
And is that in the new package here? Okay. This is much easier to read.
That part is. Then page 29 is, oh, wait, I'm going the other way. I'm sorry, excuse me. 31 looks like this in my packet,
Okay.
which I printed out from the amended agenda.
If I could make a suggestion for future, could we number the pages
And date them.
and date them? The date it's been very difficult because I guessed what was new and what wasn't, and it was not easy. And I succeeded in one document, but not the other two.
Well, there were almost 30 pages that were absolute duplicates, absolute.
No, I was trying to figure out which ones were
I know.
new when I was
You had to
printing, because
go
I
through
didn't want
page
to
by
print
page.
30 pages.
Okay.
Anyway, okay, as we move along,
There should be a guide, Matt, to what we're doing.
Right.
We should not have to do
No.
this sort of detective work. It should be in the public record so everybody sees it. But, just telling us what is new, what's not new, what's changed, this is just way too hard.
Yeah.
And I understand the whole thing about making sure that there's not improper discussion. Put it in the record and say to the Board of Adjustment, here's what's new and what page it is.
This is a change package.
Yeah, this is just,
So-
if we didn't have Edie, we'd be spending half an hour
So-
literally trying to figure out what's
So we're
going
going to
on.
have to probably walk through this.
The page I was referring to that I was trying to get to was a couple more after, which looks like this. And mine has red because my printer is color. But it's that same drawing, but it has must be Matt's calculations, which are extremely helpful. So like you'll see on the center one, here's a hallmark you can look for. Look for 1,337 square feet in the middle of the center diagram there are 3 floors. So it's on the first floor.
And that should be the same as this one, but you're telling me it's not.
It's not.
I could
It's
also
not.
add. I
It
think
doesn't
would
have
been-
this one doesn't have any numbers on it, so.
That's because they provided that
Yeah.
to us, and Matt's numbers
Right.
are on what he.
So my view is, as fellow board members, as we're going through this case, if I would keep this page handy, the one with Matt's numbers, and I would keep, and maybe other things as well, because we want to hear from the applicant, and
Yeah.
of course we do. We're totally open to this, but it was such a difficult thing to decipher, my gosh. The other thing that I think you should keep handy is the previous one I pointed out, which is they listed their zone, this was the page after.
What page
There was-
number is that?
Okay, it's the page after this one.
I've got it.
So I have page 28.
Okay, thank you.
Can we get them up on the screen by any chance? Can you talk to that, or?
Well,
And then could I also add, Matt, I know if you had done another building inspector's report and then referred,
right,
and that would have been a lot easier for all of us. And that's why I asked a couple of times for the heading, building, because Edie's very good at diagrams. I am not.
Sure.
And I usually take your report and the diagrams and then go through and match everything up.
So I'm not going to revise my report to the board's requirements. If the board puts out a requirement for the applicant, that's for the applicant to adhere to. What I'm going to do is, just like I did today, is provide you the floor plan with showing the calculations, showing that their numbers have been accounted for. I'm not going to revise, considering that this was a continuation. I wouldn't revise my report
It
for
was a
this.
continuation with new material. It wasn't
Right,
the same
and
material.
that's what I gave you, was a marked up floor plan to show you the calculations that I performed on it.
With no dates or anything on it. That would help us figure out that that's what it was.
All right, we may have to have, I don't know, Edie, if we can use the teleprompter to see what people are pointing to, if we need to here.
Sure.
Because, like I said, it's very confusing.
fellow board members, is there anything else at this point that you would like me to tell you about what I found about this? Or should we continue?
Well, my question then would be, in the original report, what Matt told us was they needed a variance because of the cathedral ceiling.
And there was additional square footage.
But that's not that wasn't in the report. We've discovered that. We pointed that out, because I read the report again, and unless I missed it the second time,
Well, I think the report is identifying that a floor area ratio, there's too many square feet in the structure, and that's attributable to two different things.
but that's not what the report says. The report says, the design incorporates a cathedral ceiling that has impact on the calculation of allowable area. So,
Well, that's a true statement.
well, it's a true statement, but it's not a complete statement, because it would have been much more helpful to say it wasn't just the cathedral ceiling, the building itself, which all came out at the hearing, but it didn't come out in the building inspector's report. And just another sentence that would have said, in addition to the cathedral ceiling, the overall FAR was too big.
And the applicant's chart was more useful, if
The
you will.
applicant's chart, yes.
That was very useful a month ago or 3 weeks ago.
Right.
Yes, agreed.
Okay.
Well, that was easy so
Yeah.
far.
So, Matt,
Someone ready to make
you
a
are
motion?
concluded here. At this-
I am, thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to get my paper squared, over to the applicant to present their case.
May I ask a question of Matt?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Matt, before I even got the amended materials, I had several questions. A couple of them are for the applicant, but for you, and I just want to be sure. What variances variances are needed to accomplish the new plan that they have submitted? If we were to grant the variance or variances, what exactly would we be granting, please? That's what I'm a little unsure about.
Are you okay with that question?
Yeah, I mean, it's a floor area ratio variance is what this application has been from the beginning and continues to be.
Right.
And it's just one variance.
That's right.
It's just for the cathedral ceiling this time,
It's
correct?
a floor area ratio variance regardless of what situation has created that.
Right.
It's floor area ratio.
Because
period.
of the cathedral ceiling,
Well, and
Any circumstances.
he's,
quoting from your reports.
But
Okay.
it could be the case that if the cathedral ceiling was fine, that the floor area ratio needed to be adjusted somewhere else in the building.
Well, that's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's where I'm a little confused, because the report still says 293 square feet. And that's what after reviewing it, I'm still thinking it's 293 square
Well, that was the total for the origination of the
Correct.
report from the original application.
right,
The board pushed back and said, we need you to
Correct.
take off blah, blah, blah square feet. They presented the new floor plans to recognize the reduction in square footage. I gave you those numbers to be able to recognize that those numbers have been dropped down.
Okay, and those numbers are in what artifact?
the
the
thing I
m-
pointed out to you.
Yes.
With
If I'm
Matt's
looking-
numbers, I had page 36 of what we just got, not last month's.
Okay.
It's
If
the-
I'm-
it's-
Because I don't have that, and I printed it out, so I have no idea
Okay,
where
well,
that's coming. That's why I may ask for it to
well,
go.
do you want to annotate Ann, are we allowed to take a moment and have him annotate his drawing with what this says, or does it have to be a verifiable drawing? Just, the red numbers are on that, it's the same three-floor drawing, but it has Matt's annotations, and they're in red on mine.
White printer too, huh?
I can read it to you, but I don't know if that's kosher.
Says,
That's fine.
Nine-
Matt's in the room. He
This
would
says
correct you
973.
if.
Could I can read it, okay.
Says 973. And this says 127.
Can't access the K drive?
Right here. Yeah,
Should be able
because it's
to.
on the front porch for some reason. But you get a free front porch. And this says, oh, wait.
I didn't bring my magnifying glass
Sorry
here.
for this.
This says
problem.
979, I believe.
Yeah, which doesn't match something else, which I'll bring up.
Okay, thank you.
It's either a typo or, you need to,
No, I'm good. I'm smart enough to sit next to you.
well, I don't know.
And of course, the architect's testimony is going to confirm some of this also.
Of course, when we get to the applicant. But I still have a question or two for Matt. I'm just trying to make sure I understand where we are. As you know, that's where I always like to start. Where are we, and then where do we want to go, or what are the possibilities of where we're going?
So this number is now,
I don't know.
well, what is it represented to be there?
Well, look at this. This says,
Okay, well, we'll get to it then. Oh.
floors up and it doesn't add up. I don't know what's wrong, but something's wrong.
Thank you, Matt, for bringing that up.
So far, it looks great.
Behold. Oh, maybe not.
There we go.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
So there's the document that I created in response to the applicant's new submission for the floor plans, recognizing your request to decrease the square footage, as I gave you the numbers there shown in red. I do a little bit of control, obviously, for some of the porches and things to make sure that my numbers are very accurate according to what the documents they've submitted. So you can see those controls there, as well as the square footages that the architect is listing in his plans being recognized or refuted, if you will.
Okay, Matt, could I ask you something, please?
Yes, ma'am.
For being so patient, I appreciate
Absolutely.
that.
No worries.
Okay, I see 1337 in the center, in the first floor.
That is correct.
And that seems to be consistent. But on the basement, your measurement says 979. But in there, I'd like to have my fellow board members look at this page that I said that you want to look at, this other page that I think is important. If you look at the GFA summary, they're saying the second floor is 997. You're saying it's 979. And I think I need to perhaps ask the applicant, but I want to know what you feel it is, Matt, based on your measurements.
Yeah, so normally, and let me just explain that a little bit. Normally, the X there that you see on that second floor blow up, if you will, the second floor plan that they're showing, normally would not be included in a normal calculation unless it was above the 12 feet plate height. So here it is included. So it's a general overall footprint of the entirety of the floor plan that they are showing. I can't speak to obviously what the architect has represented for his numbers on the plan. But here I show you that this is the number that I came up with in my calculation.
Okay, so if I can reiterate, from your perspective, Matt.
Yes, ma'am.
The basement is 979. Is that correct?
From the perspective and the drawing that they're showing me, including the label of crawl space there, the number that I get is 979.
979.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And on the second floor, on the first floor, excuse me, you show 1337 square feet. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and I'm just pointing this out to my fellow board members. There's a discrepancy here in what we have that we can ask our
And does the
applicant.
127 not count?
The 127 is the front porch.
The porch.
That's the credit,
No,
right?
that's correct. It doesn't count. And then the top floor, let's see. You had, there's nothing from the top floor because all of that was
It's
was
hidden.
double height?
It's hidden in the stair. If you look at the landing, there's a
Yes.
979 there.
Okay,
It just doesn't stick out very good, unfortunately. It doesn't if it's red.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
And then there's a 226, is
The
that right?
226 is a roof deck that is not included in floor area ratio.
Okay.
so there's no additional square footage from what we see, from what your perspective, on the third floor?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we should have, according to you, 979 on the basement and 1337 on the first floor.
And then 979 as well on the second floor for the totality of the square footages.
So that's 3,295. Am I the only one?
But remember that you get 1,000 square foot credit if
Right.
you're doing the
Right,
basement, so.
Right.
Okay, so those would, as my fellow board members might see, there are some questions here based on the page that I had you reference, this one, that we can ask the applicant about. That's all that I have at this
Okay.
point.
And can we, yeah, we might want to leave that up there, Matt. if you want to
Absolutely.
s-
Yeah.
you
No
can-
worries.
Thank you, Matt.
All right,
I know
thank
that's a
you.
lot to ask you at
You're
the
quite
beginning,
welcome. No,
but
you're fine.
we appreciate your
You
time.
can't control that from over here, right?
No. Okay, and we do not need to swear in the applicant again, right?
Just for the record, you were sworn in during the initial hearing, and you recognize that your testimony you're giving today is sworn testimony, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, thank you.
That goes for the architect as well,
Yes.
right? You understand that you were sworn in?
Yes, I was, thank you.
That was tricky, the way you did that.
Yeah, I mean, these discrepancies between a few square feet here and there, I think could be attributed to just exactly where we are measuring to, inside face of wall, outside face of wall. Not exactly sure, where those delineations start and stop between Matt Janis's dimensions and mine. But either way we calculate it, we are down to the correct square footage of 2085, I do believe, which is 1 square foot under our allowable gross square footage if the double height space were to be removed.
So you're saying you believe 2085 is your square footage?
Yes.
And Matt's saying 2295 with the 1,000-foot credit.
And then, right, so that would be his number less the 1,000 square foot credit, but still including the double height space. So if you control for the double height space that we are, considering the subject of the variance, if you subtract that out, I'm getting
I see-
2085.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. And that's actually on page 28, the chart.
That's the one that I've been.
Yeah, so I have been notating Matt's numbers in blue here, and it's, +2, -18, +5. So I have not gone through a calculator here, but I do believe we still end up right at that 2085 number.
So if I can go back to Matt. So Matt, according to you, the square footage, total square footage that we would need to be looking at, 979 plus 979. That's the basement plus the second floor. And then 1337 for the first floor, which was 3295. Yep.
Your totals here for this plan are going to be the first and second floor because essentially the basement is a wash.
Okay,
So
you're
keep that
calling
in
it a
mind.
wash, not taking off 1,000.
Oh, I see.
Is that right?
So because
I
they
ju- this-
didn't use exactly the 1,000, they used the 979.
Okay.
Right, if they had a 500 square foot basement, they would get 500
500.
square.
Okay.
They wouldn't then get the
You
additional
can't get
500.
more than your basement size.
Correct.
Okay,
Very good.
so 979 plus 1337 is 2316.
Right, and my calculation had 2312. So
Right.
that's
But
4.
but do you see, but do you see that your second floor on this page says 997
Right,
instead
should
of
say-
979?
Yes,
I didn't
that
know
was a
if that was a
typo.
transposition or a typo, or
Yes,
if
it was.
truly there's a different measurement that we need to be looking at.
No, that's correct. I believe my number was actually 977.
So it doesn't
That was a
even,
typo. I apologize for that. But Matt Janis's number, it would be 2 square feet over mine. So we are still down to 2312 on my calculations. And then again, if we missed a corner here or there, a sheet of drywall, that can account for those 2 square feet. So I believe that was really the difference between our two numbers.
So if this application is approved, some relief is going to be granted. And it's going to be the challenge of the applicant and Matt Janis and his office to see to it that whatever they approve is not in excess of the relief that they're granted.
correct.
So we don't have to say that you can build some element of, some element of the plans you've submitted is fine, but some other element is not. It's really their responsibility to get it right in the end. And it's the city's responsibility to confirm that they get it right.
Right, you're recommending that we do not qualify it, that the overage, the variance be used for a second floor ceiling?
I think the record can show that the relief is based on this particular feature, if that's in fact what you all decide. And if you really think it's important to make that a condition, you can, but I don't know that that's necessary. And it might present some kind of a challenge down the road to the enforcement office in evaluating the plan. Because their perspective is that this is all about one issue, which is square footage, and how they go about making use of the square footage they're permitted, and any relief they're granted is up to them. So I think that's the simplest way to look at it.
If I can
If it
pose,
were money, they could spend it wherever they like. You know?
That's well said.
Right, that's right.
Matt, may I ask you one more question? I
Yes, ma'am.
appreciate your patience.
No worries.
So do you agree, though, with the architect's note here on page 28, that the double height is the 227? Is that right?
I could confirm that number, but it does look to be about the 100 square feet, yes.
Okay, so if we're talking about 2316 and square feet, and we're subtracting 227, which would be the building without the double height, that would be 2089. Is that where we are? I mean, the architect has 2085 here on page 28, so we're down to close numbers here, but, so we're in the ballpark, very, very close.
Yes, ma'am.
And they say that 2086
Yes,
is the allowable. They don't need a variance if they were below 2086, correct?
That would
Yes,
be,
they-
Correct.
okay.
so right now we're 226 square feet over?
With the inclusion of the double,
Yes.
With the
Yes.
inclusion, correct.
The inclusion.
Okay.
So we're at somewhere 2316, or as they have 2315, or 2312, if they really did have a typo here for the 979 versus 997. And the 227, though, is, everybody's nodding on that, so yes.
Okay.
220, if we went back to the original chart of last week, it was 293 minus 73.
Well, that was the extra
Right.
beyond,
You're right, that's what I'm saying.
Correct.
So that should all balance. That's why
that
it's
was,
very
that was
close.
beyond the double height.
Can I ask the board its view on Fred's suggestion to us, which is that we not state in the approval that it's because of the double height? I don't know that I agree with that.
I don't.
I don't either.
I don't, and you know,
I think
I always like
exactly.
to agree with Fred, but
Yeah.
I've lived here a long time, and as we all know, variances go with the property
Forever.
forever and ever. So I think we need to be, I agree.
Yeah, because I think otherwise what we're doing is just increasing the FAR, and
That's
I don't think that's where the board is, actually. I think it's because of the double count,
Right.
as opposed to the increased density.
And I think that's the only reason that we agreed to give them another chance and rehear to maybe take a look at this again, or else we would have voted 3 weeks ago, and it might have been a totally different outcome.
Okay, so my effort was just to simplify
Yeah, I
things.
understand.
But I do understand exactly where you are, and that's fine. And I suppose it's just a little bit more of a challenge if you are of a mind to grant the variance, how to state the motion. But I'll think about that some more, and we'll see how this goes.
where it goes, okay.
So can I ask a question of the applicant? If I recall from last month, that when we talked about the variance for the height, did we not determine, and maybe that nothing really could be built up there if you decided to put a 9-foot or 8-foot ceiling, that it was so small that maybe a closet?
Correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
in the front of the building, yes.
Right,
Yes.
and that was my observation. I just wanted to make,
The slope of the roof was such.
was such
Right.
that it didn't really allow,
Right.
like,
It's
you
not
know,
a full
Stand up.
floor.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you continue now.
Okay, I had one question going off of what Mr. Townsend was saying. Is there a possibility we could tie the variance also to the lot coverage? Because we are under lot coverage by 4%. So if we were to be granted the extra 227 square feet, but be tied to our 36%, there's no physical way for us to utilize that extra 227 square feet in any other way, because the footprint of the building is fixed.
So I think, I see you shaking your head, but I think what he's saying is that if,
different
if,
animals.
if we don't, if they don't incorporate the double counting into the application, they're going to violate the lot coverage requirement. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I was,
I mean, if you utilize the extra space in footprint, you would then bump up against the lot coverage restriction. Therefore, therefore, the board need not be terribly concerned about coupling the two because you're already maxed out at footprint.
Right, that is accurate, yes. I guess I was even going a step further, saying if you grant the variance, could you also limit the building footprint to a lower number than is allowed on the lot? So we are allowed 1669, we are proposing 1495. If you hold us to that 1495, there's no other design that works on this property except to use that 227 square feet for double height space.
So you're offering that as help to us, basically.
Quid pro
That
quo.
doesn't sound like you're asking for anything that you haven't asked for already. You're just saying, yeah,
Right.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
I don't want to complicate it any further.
And, you know, Matt has been shaking head this way, that way.
Yeah, I think it's just important to remember that they are two different animals, as I heard someone say. Lot coverage
yeah, I
is one
said that.
thing, and the amount of floor area ratio is another thing. And the two, they work with each other, but they don't speak to each other.
Yeah,
They're complementary.
Well
I will
said.
respectfully suggest that's not a good idea.
Right,
For the
I
reason
agree.
that would then bind that property forever. So that nobody would then be able to get back up to the coverage if you wanted to sell the house a number of years from now. So I'll play lawyer for you for a second and suggest don't do that.
Understood, thank you.
Okay.
Continue.
I mean, we, shaved little pieces of the building down to try to get to this number. I know we are at a discrepancy of 4 square feet here between Matt Janis's numbers and mine. Willing to take another inch off or cut a corner, whatever we need to do to get those 4 square feet to work out. But yeah, we focused on not changing the material nature of the property while still hitting the number without the double height space. So we would like to go for the variance and basis of aesthetics, like we were mentioning before in the previous meeting. And, hopefully we can figure that out, this 4 square foot.
Okay, and just for the record, state again, you believe the overage of the square footage, just because I know we're throwing numbers around.
The overage of the square footage in my calculations is 226 square feet.
Okay.
Matt's shaking his head, so I'm presuming there's an
I
agreement.
believe we can agree on that number.
Okay,
Okay.
good, thank you.
And we were going to 227 just to have a little buffer there. So that's why you see it on the chart there.
I have
ahead.
a question, which, why didn't you date these things, these drawings, any of
Apologize for
them,
that.
any of them?
I didn't know they would be placed in the same package as the previous drawings. I thought we were doing a full replacement. I apologize.
No, it's not, you don't need to apologize. I just was wondering if it wasn't your standard. We get many architectural drawings.
Sure.
And many of them are dated as the date.
Yeah,
that they're-
so,
And these weren't, and it was a surprise to me.
right, we do like to keep the presentation drawings a little less technical.
I see.
That's why we have the title block on the bottom. Usually we have it on the side, and that does have all the dates.
Okay.
Typically, when we present these, they're in paper format, so we do blow them up, and that's not really legible, so that is the reason for
Okay.
the formatting here.
My next question is, what is your exceptional practical difficulty if we do not grant this variance?
Well, we would have to redesign to meet the code, so.
I think it's also our position that it would not be in character as well, as much as this design is.
In character of
the neighborhood.
neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a reference to aesthetics. If you
Right.
wanted to elaborate on that, now might be a good time to do it.
Sure. So the rendering, which I believe is page 33 in the new package, really indicates how the property will look from the exterior. If we were to cut the double height space, the portion of the building on the left side of the sheet would be at the porch level, and then would have to step up at the middle of the building. I think it would be sort of an awkward condition for the property, as well as not a contributing factor to the aesthetics of the neighborhood anymore.
If you were, I know it should be design class here, but if you were to drop that down and put a couple shed dormers for the windows, did you run that design?
So we have a shed dormer on the rear of the property, which you can see on page, just a moment.
And that's architecturally pleasing for the aesthetics, that look.
So page 32 shows sort of an axonometric view of the property, both from the front corner on the left and the back corner on the right. And you can see sort of the triangle on the rightmost side of the page, and then the shed dormer does extend over that to give
Yeah, I'm just saying
8-foot height.
for single windows, just to give the applicant the light they seek.
Sure, so that would
And I don't know what that does to the square footage, but it has to drop it.
Right. So I think that would still put it at the 12-foot height based on the ruling in the code.
Okay.
That's my understanding of it.
Okay.
Can I ask Fred a question about that, about the exceptional difficulty? I guess my question is, how exceptional does it have to be? The fact they have a 48 wide lot by 80-something foot deep. There are others, but that's not the common. Is that considered, or could that be considered by individuals on this board as an exceptional difficulty?
So when you're looking at these criteria, it's not as if you're checking boxes and then you just move on. It's not like yes, yes, yes,
Right, I
or
agree
stop
with
at
that.
no.
Right.
So you're meant to take them into consideration in a very holistic or global way. And some of the factors and some of the circumstances that you consider as you apply the standards might lead you to a very firm conclusion in some instances, and then others,
We have a little leeway then. is what
so
you're saying,
yes, so
yeah.
you have leeway. So I think that while not everyone who has a substandard lot, we'll call it, is entitled to relief, just because they have a substandard lot. I think courts have said if you're legal non-conforming, that is not automatic justification for a variance, but you can take into consideration whatever it is the applicant gives you as support for why they have a exceptional practical difficulty, and it's up to you to determine whether that's acceptable.
We've had other cases where the depth may not have been the standard, and we've had other cases where the width has been not the standard. In this case, we have both the depth and the width are not the standard, which, just a thought. Thank you. Thank you, Fred.
I have a question for the applicant and your architect. Is there anything that we haven't asked you, or anything that you want to share that we haven't somehow unearthed in this process? I want to make sure you've said everything you wanted to say about anything.
Personally, I don't have anything. I think the dimensions of the square footage, the double height space, and then also, like Mr. Saunders was pointing out, the size of the lot was our initial thought process in asking for this variance.
Okay. Yeah. There's nothing really that I can add. A lot of items were discussed last time.
Yes.
So, so again, trying to use the lot efficiently, trying to fit into the neighborhood, a nice rebuild to the property. So I think nothing really new. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Go Mark, any final questions?
In my mind, I do believe they have an exceptional difficulty in the size of the lot, and I know there are others that
Well,
are.
we'll discuss that during our.
Oh, that's what I thought we were doing.
Yeah, do you have any
I'm
questions
sorry.
for the
I thought we were
applicant?
doing- oh, I'm-
Questions of the
No more
applicant
questions, I apologize. I
close
was jumping
the-
ahead.
Edie?
I was jumping ahead.
No more questions that
Okay.
I think I've answered.
Okay.
So you're going to want to ask if the public.
Yeah, and is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak on this case? Okay, we're going to close down the public portion. And we're going to discuss among ourselves. the case. So I'm going to start with you,
No,
Bill.
we'll start with Marcus.
You want to start with Mark?
Mark
He's
already started.
started already.
I already
Just
gave
trying
it to you.
get
Mark
everyone
already
pulled
started.
in.
He started without us.
Now I've changed,
Okay, all right.
now I've changed my mind. No, no. I really think that this is an exceptionally small lot because both the width and the depth is substandard. Together with the aesthetics, I do think they have an exceptional difficulty. That's all I really have to say in discussion.
Edie?
I'm on the fence, but I'm leaning towards granting the variance.
Your reasons, what's the,
Well, I think the house is lovely. I believe that these gentlemen, you and your partner, whom we were meeting last month or last few weeks ago, have really investigated how to best use a smaller lot and use it well. What I don't want to be thinking is anybody in town that has a lot of this size would be, I know we don't set precedents here. Every one of our cases is brand new, no matter what we ever decided on another case. But it could be that people say, well, gee, you know, we can always go this way because the board might take us into account this time. And I don't like that. So that's what gives me an almost 50% against vote. But I said I'm leaning slightly over 50% for.
and your reasons for, being on the fence, that would go towards quick check item number 3, I believe, for the implications
Yes.
of what an approval would do.
Yes.
Okay, Jan, thoughts?
Well, frankly, I thought Craig Carson's decision on the Bellhaven was awful. I have to agree with Max Walton that aesthetics should not be a reason. However, it is in court, and it was approved and granted on the issue of aesthetics. There's lots of small lots in Rehoboth. There's lots of really weird lots in Rehoboth, triangular shaped lots. And Matt's shaking his head. He knows there are. I don't say a dime a dozen, but there are. I have a friend that lives on a 25 by 100 foot lot. So if you think you got problems, but I do think that you have done the very best you can in finding a design that blends in with that. And I know the neighborhood. I used to live on Sussex Street. That blends in with the neighborhood, and that for aesthetic reasons, it's just a little. It's just a little variance, I guess, and that's why I felt strongly that we should include the reason for where the variance should go in any opinion that we have, that it needs to be included, that it's important.
Bill, your thoughts?
I'm leaning in support for just summarizing what my colleague said. They're dealing with a smaller lot. The variance, as Jan said, is, in my view, key to the double count. So you're not actually increasing the FAR density in terms of how it appears to neighbors and the rest of us, and the whole purpose of the FAR. I understand the reason for the double count, and I think that folks should have to come here if they want exception from it. And we need to look to see whether we think we're being gamed in terms of somebody getting it, then putting a floor down and getting extra space, which is what I understand the reason for the count over 12 feet. But given what we heard here and what the plans are, I'm quite comfortable that's not what the purpose is. And I do think that the combination of the 12-foot double count and the smaller lot meets the exceptional practical difficulty. And I think they've done a lovely job in terms of blending into the neighborhood on Sussex Street, which is the third factor, and I think does count here.
Yeah, my thoughts in this case, easy on the quick check items number 1 and 2. None of us would have any issues on that.
Right.
Number 3, I do agree with Edie, the trend, the implications of approval. So, as Jan said, so many small lots in Rehoboth that would say, hey, look, we can redesign and ask for more. On quick check item number 4, I have a hard time seeing a hardship on a lot. Before you purchased it, you knew the size of it. You may not have known the code, but there's all these varying lot size. So I'm really, really stuck on this. As far as the square footage over the FAR, 226 to me, or 227, is a large number. We've been here and we've heard people talk about like 3 or 4 inches over property lines. I mean, that's the level. The training that we've received from Delaware, talks about any change must be minimal, should be, no, not shall, but should be minimal. 227 to me is not minimal, but then I continued reading on. And it also says that a exceptional practical difficulty can be inherent in the property. So it's almost like it goes against itself, which is why we have a board of 5 here. So it's really a hard one for me. The 227 is a tough one, but then Delaware goes on to tell us that you can consider the property to be the reason for the exceptional practical difficulty. So any other conversations of for or against any of what we said here?
You didn't mention if we might qualify this, that it.
And we can. We don't like to qualify it.
Right.
And I do agree with, or I think I know where you're going with what Bill was saying.
Bill
The
was saying, right.
qualification would being, and that could be put if whoever wants to make a motion in that qualification.
Would we be qualifying, or would we just be stating that the reason that the variance was granted was because of a double height, or
So I
I don't
think-
know how to
We need to
phrase it.
qualify it.
I think some of the members would prefer that be a qualification, as opposed to simple reference
And the,
Okay,
yeah.
in the record.
And the reason why I feel more comfortable with that is, we have the other case with one of the hotels.
right.
It was approved way over, and now they're changing it, but it's almost like we've given them a blank check. So we would be giving them a blank check for square footage with no qualifications.
As Mark said, if it was money, they could spend it any way they wanted. The
Exactly,
square footage,
exactly,
you
a
could-
good analogy.
That's a good way to
Yes.
say
But
it.
he was responding to a comment that I made. Matt, can I ask Matt a question?
Sure.
Real quick? Is 226 attributable, or does that correspond exactly to the area that's being double counted? Or can it be said, obviously it could be attributable, yeah, but can it be said that the 226, so in other words, if a motion was made that required no less than 226 square feet attributable to double counting,
Oh, I see where you're going.
Recall that that number is actually the doubling, so I don't know if it's a legal thing that needs to be specified that it's actually 100 and some for that actual area, and because it's doubled, it makes that 200. But I don't think we would have an issue if there was a qualification.
do we know what, so the square footage, is it 100?
If I may, so the interior space is 179, and then including the exterior walls, which the GFA does, that brings it to 227. So the space that we're double counting is the X plus the 2 exterior walls that are adjacent to that. So if we take the, basically the guardrail for the overlook, that's where our double height space starts, and then it goes to the exterior face of the exterior walls.
So what's the number, if I can ask you, of the square footage that is being doubled?
So because the measurements happen from the exterior face of the wall, it's 227.
200 and what?
227.
That's
Okay,
being
that's the
doubled.
number that we
does
have.
match,
have
yeah.
Okay, it does match that. Okay, that's the number we have.
So that's being doubled.
Yes. Well,
No,
sorry.
That's what I'm asking
The
you.
footprint of that space is 227, so it would be 454 to double count it.
Okay.
But it does align with, I think, where Fred's question was, it's not like back in the kitchen or extra space.
Right, and I just did a quick calculation here. The difference between what we are proposing for the footprint and what we are allowed is 174 square feet. So even if we were granted that 227, and we did have the intention of redesigning the house, which I don't, we would only be able to add 174 square feet. So Yeah, it's not to be used anywhere but that
Okay.
double height space.
Okay, can I get a motion from someone, please?
Bill makes good motions.
So
So we're going from one end to the other
Right.
end.
Edie, I think Edie and I should work on this together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe, sure.
But the good news is I think you have given your support for the motion. So I think when it comes time to vote, you can simply say, you know, unless somebody's unhappy with the way it's worded, that for the reasons you've already given, you're supportive of the motion.
Can I ask a question, just a technical question? So, you know, so we're saying essentially, we're clarifying, or, you know, as part of the motion, that the double count, which equals 227 feet, is part of this motion and should be only used for the clear story, or whatever you're calling it, a cathedral ceiling or whatever.
Double height.
That's what you're hearing.
I think you could say that the plan must incorporate an area that's double counted, which is no less than X number of square feet. Is it two?
Or no more
no
than.
greater.
No greater than
No greater than.
227.
Per the submitted design, you know.
Wouldn't that?
Well, because if they, if they took the
Oh, I see what
extra
you're
area
doing.
you gave them,
I
and
see
then
what you did.
and they didn't didn't have the double counted area, now they could put it someplace
Well, why
else.
don't we would say approximately?
Well, but
Yes.
he's doing more than
because we
that.
don't
The
want it-
reason he used less than is because he's saying that that's the dimension that needs to be used
The
in
100
that
then to be
fashion.
one
The
something.
No, the 227,
okay, all right.
because,
Let me tell you what I'm thinking of
Yeah.
before I make the motion.
okay,
That we move to approve the variance to permit excess square footage of approximately 227 square feet, conditioned on the use of that excess space in a double height loft of approximately the same size. I think that's what we're saying.
Our
Is that-
intention, right.
Yeah, because if we said no more than, then if they went down to zero,
Right.
they could add it to the kitchen, which is
Exactly.
not what we're allowing them to do.
no.
And so I think if we link them both to be
And can it be
approximately
linked,
that
can it
amount.
be linked to the submitted design, as close to the submitted design?
Does that work, Fred?
Yes, it does, because
Okay.
that's a part of the record, and
All right.
That's good, Bill. That's good, Bill. did a
You
good
understand why
job
we
of
go
it.
through this?
Yes,
Because it
absolutely.
stays with the property if you guys ever sell, okay?
Understood. Yep.
Okay, I'm going to try.
Okay, go for it.
So I'm going to move that we approve the variance to permit excess square footage of approximately 227 square feet, conditioned on the use of such excess square footage in the same amount as provided in the submitted design for a cathedral ceiling.
Cathedral, yep. I'll second that.
Okay, and we're going to go to a vote now. Mark, I'm going to go to you.
Aye.
and you could
You could
just
state-
simply make
Yeah.
reference.
Oh, I'm sorry, for the reference, for the statements already made previously.
Aye for me, for the same reason. I think we've discussed it and looked at everything and found that this is where we need to go.
Jan?
Aye for me, for the reasons stated in our discussion.
Aye, for the same reason stated.
And I'm going to vote in favor of this, again, for the reasons stated, and that the property has an inherent practical difficulty, and with the conditions that we put on it for, that is, the square footage is in this cathedral. So thank you for coming back. Thank you for reworking it, and house looks beautiful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Enjoy your new home.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
No.
Did you want your large prints back?
You can have it.
You need them? I
As
mean,
long as Ian has one, right?
you can give them to the carpet guy or something?
No,
No, really, no. Thank you.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. All right. All right, let's move on to our new business. And we stated earlier that we have one new case, and I don't need to repeat all the Delaware conditions. So Matt, I'm going to open it up and ask you to go over the building inspector's report.
Thank you, Chair. I believe this one should be a little bit more cut and dry for you this afternoon. Before you today is case number 0424-04, and the location of this property is 101 South Boardwalk. The applicant owner is Dynami LLC, trading as Baja Bob's, 16A Bel Air South Parkway, Bel Air, Maryland, 21015. Representative who is here today is Robert Frankus, 15 Lay Drive, Berlin, Maryland, 21811. The subject is as follows. The applicant seeks relief from the following: 27019 restaurants for the sum ... which I will go into later. Nature of the request is as follows. The applicant, Dynami LLC, represented by Robert Frankus, is seeking a variance to 27019 restaurants for sum of total allowable dining area to create an overage, of total square footage of a restaurant or restaurants serving alcoholic beverages located in one building. The property is located at 101 South Boardwalk, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 19971, and is situated in the C1 Central Commercial District. The property is listed in Sussex County records as tax map number 334-14.18-38.00, and the parcel contains approximately 6,268 square feet. A little bit of background information for you. The representative currently owns and operates Above the Dunes, which is located on the second floor of the existing building. I'm sure we've all been there. It's a lovely establishment. As approved by the commissioners, Above the Dunes contains 2,310 square feet of dining area and 500 square feet of bar area for a total of 2,810 square feet. Variance requested is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the following ordinances. 27019 Use Restrictions A, Restaurants. In addition to the standards of the relevant zoning district, a establishment that meets the definition of a restaurant where alcoholic liquor is sold or consumed on the premise shall comply with the following. Number 4, the sum of floor space devoted to permit-seated dining area, the bar area, in any building shall not exceed 2,500 square feet, except that where a restaurant occupies space in a building also housing a hotel-motel containing at least 25 bedrooms, the area so devoted may be up to, but not more than 3,750 square feet. The proposed use of a restaurant with alcohol service would add 769 square feet of seated dining and 256 square feet of bar area for a total of 1,025 square feet in the spaces shown. The total overall seating and bar area for the entire building would be 3,835 square feet, 1,335 square feet over the allowable amount of total service area. Because the existing restaurant is currently serving alcoholic beverages and the new restaurant areas would increase the allowable use areas, the application requires a variance for the operator to serve alcohol in the new establishment. Because the conclusion is because the application would violate the listed code section, the applicant requires a variance to allow the operation of a restaurant containing liquor service above the allowable 2,500 square feet contained within the entirety of the building. Certainly take any questions you may have.
Okay.
I have a question, Matt.
Certainly.
This property was already granted a variance in January of 2008.
That was
The Green Turtle. It was the Green Turtle, but as we have pointed out many times, the variance goes with the property. So were there any other variances granted since then?
to my knowledge, no.
Is there a way, like I know that, you all have folders for every property. When a variance is granted, do those variances go in the folder or are they somewhere else? So it's not so easy to find them.
So they typically, 2008, it's anybody's guess to where that documentation went in that year. I know that because of our new systems and standards of tracking, it all goes into our computer database now. So all the stuff that is, within respect of maybe the last 5 to 8 years is all making into our database. Some of the other stuff may or may not be in our records, and I did not locate, because the green turtle does not exist anymore.
Right.
I didn't locate that variance, unfortunately.
Okay, so you don't think that there was any more? I mean, I was thinking just because it would be by address,
Right,
that
right.
would be, then somebody said, oh, well, they don't know if that really happened, so that's why I asked.
Yeah, I'm not sure that, I can certainly go back and take a look to what we have, but because the green turtle doesn't exist anymore, and as you stated, the variance does go with the property, but I believe at the time, then with the company took over the Above the Dunes, they made such renovations to that existing floor plan that I think that variance was pretty much blown out of the water, and I do not believe that the applicant knew of that variance at that time. Of course, you can speak to the applicant about that particular case,
Okay.
but
All right, okay.
Okay,
Matt,
Matt, go ahead, Mark.
The third restaurant being Thrasher's, how does that enter into it?
say that again, please.
Isn't there a third restaurant involved in Thrasher's?
They don't serve alcohol. It's
They
only
don't
serve-
serve-
Would it not still be in the square footage? That's my
The
question.
problem here is that this restaurant, this application wants to serve alcoholic beverages. It's important to remember that this restaurant can operate if it does not serve alcohol, but they wish to serve alcoholic beverages out of this application, or excuse me, out of this occupancy as well.
I can give you some background. In 1992, the city passed, I think it was somewhere of 91 or 92, the city passed a code that allowed them to regulate restaurants that serve alcohol with the approval of the Alcoholic Beverage Commission at the time. And so that's when the 5,000 square feet and all of that stuff started back and then. And it has, it has still continued. So you could have, 40 restaurants that don't serve alcohol, like you do, Gus and Louie's and all that. They don't count. I mean, it's only alcohol, because what the state determined was that a city can regulate alcohol, but you can't regulate a restaurant in this sense.
Matt, I have a couple of questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Any issues with the fire marshal for this proposed design that we need to be aware of?
In fact, they do, and they are currently holding and are currently going through the process of their building permit to retrofit the existing space. So fire marshal has full approval across that application as well. Speaking to Mr. Frankus earlier today before the meeting began, I do believe that he informed me that the fire marshal is waiting to come in to do his final inspection very soon. So
Good, thank you. So they are involved.
yes.
And do you have, from your experience here with the city, do you have any history on subcode number 4 that we're talking about today? In particular, with the additional sentence of, if you have a hotel or motel, we're going to give you more. Is there any, this is where you wish you had little notes in the side columns.
If only we could be flies on the wall
Right.
at that time. I don't have any knowledge of when or where or why. I do know, speaking with the secretary, that there was an incident possibly at First Street Station. I don't necessarily know if that's true or not, but there was a restaurant application that wanted to go in there, and I believe that at that time, which may have been 2008, 2009, somewhere in there. I don't have the timing of it, so forgive me for speaking.
But there's no hotel there.
There is no hotel there.
But the
That's
city
right.
code held up in court, is what happened in that case.
Correct.
I mean, I have my suspicions with some other nearby towns as to why
Sure.
we may have given a little bit more leniency if you have a hotel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then this is not on this case here, but I do have a question on 270-19A2. Do they, and I'll read it to the board, is regularly used and kept open principally for the purpose of serving complete meals, the service of only such food and victuals, never used that word, as sandwiches or salads shall not be deemed to be the service of meals. Do they really expect the building inspector to ask for the menu to go?
That's,
I mean, I'm shaking my head, you know, and
So,
I
Yeah,
mean, I had to
absolutely.
look up a taco, and that is a sandwich, by the way.
right, yes. So, yes, that's a great question. In this, as a little bit of background to where this came from, this actually surfaced when the applicant applied for his permit of compliance.
Okay.
So part of that permit of compliance application requires that you give a menu, give a floor plan, give spaces designated. As a requirement of the permit of compliance, as you stated, you cannot just serve sandwiches or takeaway meals or anything like that. It has to be a plated meal, and a salad doesn't count for that. So he's got, I believe, some taco platters that come with some rice and beans that meet the qualification of a plated meal. Also, I completely lost my train of thought there.
That's okay. So it does, and you do get this and the other thing is regularly used. I'm thinking, okay, well, it's the boardwalk. Is it going to be open in the winter? But then my head says, okay, grottos, they close in the winter. Back porch closes. So it's just like, it's not part of this gate, but I'm just confused about that zoning code in there. But it sounds like they do. You have given the menu. Okay.
Yeah, actually, absolutely. And it's as again, as I stated, as the permit of compliance application, we have a laundry list of submitted material that needs to be satisfied before it meets the commissioners meeting to get approval. And one of those obviously is the menu as well.
Okay. Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
The menu is one of the features that's analyzed to determine whether they should be licensed as a restaurant that serves alcohol or as a bar that does not.
Through
serve
the
food.
application.
And that
Okay.
creates a different set of requirements. So it's determining what type of animal that we have, first off.
And that
the
goes
case-
back to 1992, because we were having in Rehoboth at the time a lot of restaurants who were licensed at restaurants that were actually acting as bars. Sometimes, essentially, they might have had a hot plate in the back making grilled cheese sandwiches, you know, and they were as a restaurant. So that was all put in
that's-
at that time. That was
right.
the genesis of that.
That's a beach town issue, and not just in Rehoboth.
Oh,
but-
is it?
But in
Okay.
Dewey Beach as well, that you get a restaurant that doesn't maintain its character as a real restaurant.
Bars in Dewey Beach?
They allow bars. But Mark, they allow bars.
They don't.
Oh, they don't?
They do not.
So how does the bottle and cork
They're legal
make it?
non-conforming. They existed before the town. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Sorry for our side.
Okay, and one more thing.
Really?
One more thing.
It's like a history lesson.
One more thing about that decision that we were talking about in court wasn't really about whether you could restrict a building to one alcohol serving establishment. That wasn't really challenged. What was challenged was whether that structure, which has a breezeway that connects it, should be considered one building at First Street Station or two. If it was two, then they would be permitted the second alcohol serving establishment. The city contended back in 2002 that it was one building because it was attached. At I think, on the second floor, on all sides it's connected. And the argument was, you know, over whether or not that was one or two buildings, and the city's interpretation that it was one building was upheld.
That's a good history lesson. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Fred, for your judicial knowledge, and thank you, Ms. Conacy, for your historic knowledge.
Okay. Other questions?
Yes.
For
Of course.
Matt?
On the agenda, it's saying with a total of 1,006 square footage over, but everything else that I see, like in your report, Matt, said 1,335 square feet over, like on your page 2 of your building. I don't understand that disconnect.
So the existing over the dunes is legal non-compliant, right? It doesn't meet the 2,500 square foot requirement. It's already at whatever it is.
Correct.
Is it? Well, in any case, every additional square foot attributable to the proposed restaurant would be non-compliant code requirement.
Right.
So in essence, Fred, what you're saying is the entire downstairs is not code compliant?
If utilized as an alcohol serving
As an
establishment.
alcohol serving, it is not code compliant? Okay,
So-
but it's fine if they want to.
So what about the 1,006 versus 1335? What am I not understanding, Matt? Please. The agenda says, one existing building with a total of 1,006 square footage over the allowable aggregate of 2,500. But the building report, your report on the second page in the paragraph under, just over the conclusion, talks about
So
a total of 10, go ahead.
I think Matt is trying to give you a complete picture of all the square footage at the site that would, if this first floor were permitted to serve alcohol, would exist at the site. The 3835, let's see, is 1335 over the allowable, which is 2,500. But I think the key term, if I'm reading this correctly, is that 1,025 square feet attributable to the proposed use would require a variance. The above the dunes is already over 2,500, but it's permitted to be because a variance was
Its
granted.
overage doesn't count towards this.
It's only contextual.
But, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go back. So what's the 1,006
Where's 1,000?
on the agenda?
On the agenda,
The agenda says it's 1,006 square footage over.
the application agenda.
It also said it on the public notice.
That's right, it said it on the public notice too, and I don't understand that.
I wish you to ask the applicant the same question when you get to his turn. There was a reasoning before it. I can't recall it
Okay,
off the top
okay,
of my
sure,
head.
sure, that's fine. You can always say you're not quite sure, and,
Yeah,
I just
don't
ask you
recall
first.
Right, I don't recall the reason, so I'm going to defer to the applicant for that. There is a reason, though, behind
Okay,
it.
when we get to him. Let me see, I had a couple. So if my numbers are right, the existing would be 2310 dining, 500 bar in the bar for 2,810 square feet. And then proposed 769 for the dining room, or the dining area, 256 for but you only count the seated bar? Is that correct? You don't count the standing bar? Is that, I was trying to understand the diagrams, I'm sorry.
There is no such thing as a standing bar in our jurisdiction.
Okay, just asking.
Yeah, no, it's a great question.
So, okay, so that gives us 1,025 for, 1,025. So then I get 3,835 square feet total would be, if somebody was asking for 1,335 over, then they would be asking for a total of 3,835 square feet
In the entirety.
in the entirety.
Yes, ma'am.
Which would put you 1,335 over.
Right.
But they have some of that already in the variance,
No,
correct?
no,
No.
not the 1335.
No, that's the new.
So is that not, the whole downstairs is 1,335 square feet? Is that what you're telling us?
The entirety of
No, it's
the,
much bigger.
of the application that wants to be able to serve alcoholic beverages in those spaces designated is the 1335.
That's the-
Obviously,
That's the ground floor. I
The,
mean, I walked by there yesterday.
only the space that wants to serve alcohol, because remember that you can have additional space of the restaurant, but that's your storage, your service, your et cetera.
Your tables.
Not your
You wanna
tables.
serve tables. No.
No, not your tables, because you can serve
You
your
can serve
tables as
alcohol there.
well.
So
Right.
essentially, it's everything except the kitchen? What-
Anywhere you want to serve alcohol is calculated here,
If
basically.
you look at this, there's an awful lot of square footage that would not be counted.
Right.
That doesn't serve alcohol.
Because it doesn't, well.
It's not patron area.
Right.
Right, it's
well,
for
I mean,
the
it's a back
operation.
room shop. Pardon?
It's for the operation of the restaurant itself, right?
Well, that's, typical. So,
And did I understand you do not count the variance from the upstairs in these calculations?
I did not include it in my report because it wasn't really relative to me.
Even though we're using the word building and building carries from the past?
And again, this was, it was a long time variance issued that I don't have record of, that I couldn't find record of.
Okay.
So I just had to go with basically what knowledge I had already existing. So I assumed, obviously, that the occupancy for the former Green Turtle, it is what it is. It didn't change at all from the process of making it above the dunes. This is now an addition, an overage of what possibly was allowable through that variance at that time. So this is above and beyond what was approved prior to any application to this point.
Okay, thank you.
that's why I asked the question, Barry, because I wondered where we store, our decisions, because I knew they had decisions, they had a file on your house, everything that ever lived at that address. And I didn't realize that back before the computer system, they could be anywhere.
Yeah, it typically was, from what I can see, it was just kind of haphazardly. No offense, obviously, to the former staff or current staff that may have been part of that situation. But even when you speak to our property records, you may or may not find information in there that you find relevant to that property. We may have kept it, we may have not. It's just.
Okay.
Well, they should be somewhere.
You're absolutely right. They should be.
So they might exist in a different form also. It's probably likely that you've got a floor plan approved for this establishment, and that if they came forward with an application to expand the establishment, you would compare it to the floor plan and say, well, you're over 2,500, and you're restricted to whatever relief you got in the form of a variance that was granted previously. So in all likelihood, you have that floor plan, so you know what the patron area is for above the dunes.
Right, and I know we obviously have a approved occupancy from what is now above the dunes, so I can go back to those numbers and verify those. That's the best knowledge that I can give at
They're
this.
somewhere, because I found them. And I am not skilled at finding things. It's always catch as catch can, but I found them, so they're somewhere. And I can send them to you.
That'd be great if you would.
Yeah,
At least I can have that as part of the record. Sure.
right.
I have a couple more questions. I want to thank you for one thing. I really loved the fact that you had hover notes here. That was just so, you had hover comments on this, so you could just hover over and your comment would jump out. That was with the numbers. That was very helpful. I wish we'd had that. I wish we had that on other cases. So if you could do that again.
Yes, going forward, that should be the.
That was lovely. Did the rest of you experience that as you went through?
I didn't hit it. I was
Well,
just
you don't-
looking at
You
it.
just hover.
With
If you
your
just hover
mouse.
over the area and
Yeah.
his comment jumped out with the numbers. So thank you for that. That was extremely helpful. I have another question or two for you, Matt. In general, have boardwalk restaurants that needed variance, have boardwalk restaurants that serve alcohol needed variances? Or are so many of them grandfathered that, can you comment on that?
I can say that in my time, not a single one has come forward for a variance for any turnover. This application is taking over spaces that once housed a arcade,
Yeah.
a small
Selkies.
donut shop. So in relation to that, this is a new occupancy across the board. So it's going into a space that never had a restaurant into it. So that's a good thing on one side, I guess. But everything that is along the boardwalk currently is pretty much a grandfathered status,
Right.
with
So you
exception to
haven't-
here and there.
You haven't encountered this kind of situation in your term?
I have not, no.
Okay.
It's exciting.
Yeah, I was going to ask you are there any other two-story restaurants where they're going to have different entities operating, doing business as, that you've had to deal with?
I know of two-story occupancies, but I don't know of any two-story separate occupancy, if that makes sense. Like, for instance, I know that Fish On For some reason, that name is Finn's, excuse me. Finn's is a two-story restaurant. Grotto Pizza, I believe, has a two-story.
Mariachi's 3.
Mariachi has 3, yeah. So I think we have examples of multiple-story restaurants.
In one entity.
In one entity, just not multiple entities in one building.
Okay. Are there any other side issues to this that have occurred to you, or as we're talking, are there things that you say, gee, they don't understand this or that?
No, and as a matter of fact, the applicant, you know, they currently hold a building permit to be fitting out their space, and they've just been a treat to work with, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mark, any questions for Matt?
No questions.
Jan, Bill? Okay, let's move on to the applicant. Thank you for bearing with us, and open up for your presentation, please. Oh, that's right. Thank you.
So name and address for the record, please.
Robert Frankus, 15 Lee Drive, Berlin, Maryland, 21811.
Mr. Frankus, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
So I just would like to start with a little background on myself and my time here in Rehoboth. 31 years ago, I started doing business in Rehoboth. I've owned many successful businesses throughout Rehoboth and invested a ton of money in the community. So I've been leasing this building for 31 years. I do have a lot of knowledge on the variance that you guys were speaking of earlier, because that was awarded to me 18 years ago in 2008, I believe that was.
Yeah.
Is my math right? 16 years ago? I'm sorry, 16 years ago. 16 years ago, that is. So I do have a lot of knowledge of that. I've been a liquor license holder in the city of Rehoboth for that whole time. So this is my 17th or 18th year of that. I've never had a single infraction of any type in any of my businesses, either alcohol-related, any type of infractions. I am in good standing with the state, you know, all that, right? So back during Green Turtle, I had been leasing and was the owner of Playland Arcade since 1992. And, you know, the landlord came to me and asked me, hey, would you make a significant investment into this building? Which I did. We spent almost $3 million building that restaurant. It was an old condemned Sunview Motel. And we put sprinkler systems in. I mean, we did everything in that building. And since then have ran a very successful operation. 3 years ago, I switched it from a Green Turtle. I just didn't feel like it connected with the consumers of Rehoboth Beach anymore. I spent another significant amount of money to redo the whole place. I don't know if any of you have been in it, but it has a very modern feel, right? It's a huge asset to the boardwalk and to the community. So fast forward, I hold the lease, and I have held the lease for the space that I'm building out for Baja Bob's. I had sold it to Zelke's Arcade, who has a bunch of arcades. And again, I didn't feel like that really served the boardwalk anymore, and my lease was coming up for the space. And so I was sort of on the fence of like, what do I do, right? Do I allow this space to go vacant for years, however long, knowing that the space didn't even come available until 1/1/24, so it would have sat empty. And so again, the landlord said, hey, you know, can you invest money into this building? Currently, so in September, October, very proactively, I met with the city and I got verbal approval that I was in compliance. After that, I signed a 20-year lease that starts, my rental is $261,000 a year for year one, plus CAMS charges. So I made another significant investment, not only into the business, but into this lease that I'm obligated to in the neighborhood of almost $10 million, right? So this was all on the premise that what I submitted was allowable, right? Literally, my business is ready to be open in 2 weeks. I shouldn't be sitting here in front of you today asking for your permission. In addition, I've spent about $1.4 million in this new restaurant concept. It's going to be a huge asset to the boardwalk. I'm a restaurant operator. Again, I've never had any infractions. We're very responsible, right? All of our servers are tip certified, serve safe, right? We're a company that really focuses on that, and guest experience and quality and connection with the community and giving. So today I sit in front of you not because I should be today. I should have been 9 months ago, and I realize that. And so I'm asking, for your support for this. Given my track record, given my investment, I have about 61 employees right now, probably still in unemployment or some phase of employment that's waiting for me to open, right? We do spend, just last year alone, I spent just about $2 million in the state of Delaware on payroll. Right, we're making investments to do this. So, I asked for this not because I feel like I'm entitled to a liquor license, obviously. I did it because on the premise of me moving forward with the business model, I did it because I thought it was a right, not a requirement of variance. That's why I'm sitting in here for you today.
Okay, thank you. Open up to
I'd
questions.
like to ask Fred first, can a leasee have a variance when he doesn't own the building?
Yeah, that is, a 20-year lease would be considered plenty of standing, in my opinion, to permit. Now, if there was any reason to believe that the landlord didn't approve, then that would bring the wheels to a grinding halt. But we have no reason, and there's absolutely no reason in the record, or any reason to suspect that the owner would be here if the owner was in a.
It just struck me as a question.
Yeah.
That what would
And
happen.
we can ask you, the owner is okay with your moving forward here, right?
Yes, my lease does specify
Okay.
that I'm allowed to serve alcohol.
Okay, that's on record. Okay.
Thank you. My only question to you, Mr. Frankis, would be, I imagine there's a Plan B. What would Plan B be? Non-alcohol and still have the tacos, or is there?
I'm not really sure, right? In this space, as you have the floor plan, we're only estimating our liquor sales to be about 12 to 15% of our sales. But as we know, it's high profit, right? It really allows me to be able to afford to spend almost $300,000 a year on rent for 3,600 square feet, right? It's the most expensive real estate in all of Rehoboth.
But being on the boardwalk, would there not be walkaway liquor sales?
No, so we don't do that. We don't do that at Above the Dunes. We won't do that here. So we have food service takeaway, so tacos, burritos, salads, bowls, but not alcohol.
I don't
Alcohol
think you
would
can
be
have
consumed.
alcohol on the boardwalk. Right.
Yeah, it would be consumed on
Only
premise.
while seated.
I know we just
Only
changed it.
while
You can't have walkaway nowadays, just from COVID. Remember, they didn't undo that then.
Only the state has changed that. The city of Rehoboth has not changed their rules to recognize that state's change.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you.
Go to the sign on the boardwalk, because I went by the place yesterday and had the same question. The sign on the boardwalk says no alcoholic beverages on the boardwalk or the beach.
And the entrances and exits of a liquor serving establishment must be restricted. So you wouldn't be able to walk in through an open garage door and slip out if it was an alcohol serving establishment.
The only questions I had.
Edie, have any questions?
Yeah, when I knew that you were coming here today, I was surprised to see the article that you were opening for Memorial Day on May 13th and May 13th's paper. And I thought, gee, that's interesting. If we're dealing with a variance on the 20th and they're going to open for Memorial Day and telling the world about it. So I wondered how that came about.
Well, by right, I can operate a restaurant.
Right.
Just by right, I can't serve liquor.
Right. That's what I
So
thought
I
you
can
would say.
open,
Yeah.
I just can't serve alcohol.
Right.
That's,
So, but obviously you don't want to do that,
yes, ma'am, thank you.
or you wouldn't be here. Well, actually, you'd have to be here, I guess. But, so you've heard in the previous case too, we talk about exceptional practical difficulty here. What is or are your exceptional practical difficulty or difficulties in needing this variance? What would you characterize them as, please?
Well, I believe that in me being advised in a way that has cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars in design. I mean, I've put a full bar in, I've taken away square footage from what could be service that's no longer service.
Right.
I've put bar equipment, I've put, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Not to mention for the next 20 years, I'm gonna have this space that is not revenue generating unless now I have to tear apart the whole restaurant. I have to redo floors. I have to redo plumbing. I mean, it would cost me another couple $100,000.
Yeah, but we have to clarify that you cannot cause your own
Right.
practical difficulty.
Right.
The fact that you said, please put a bar in, that was generated by you, not the land, not the building. So that's,
Right.
we cannot consider that as an exceptional practical difficulty. So, sorry for interrupting.
I understand, yeah.
Continue, you can continue.
Yeah, I understand that, but in my view, when I meet with a city official who is supposed to know the laws, and we have the law book in front of us, and we read through it together with my lawyer, and they give me advice, then I would feel like I'm getting correct advice, which then resulted in me signing a lease. I wouldn't have signed the lease unless I knew I had the right? Like I wouldn't lease something and then try to figure out if I have a right. I did that proactively. I signed that lease 4 months later, right? I advise professionals to design a certain way based on, right? Like, it wasn't me saying, no, I'm going to build a bar restaurant here, right? I feel like I did my due diligence without having any other recourse, right? I don't believe that I tried to not follow the law, right? So the result of that, I think, is the hardship. Because if I was instructed properly, I wouldn't have built it that way. I wouldn't have moved forward in the way that it currently sits. So I don't know exactly what that hardship is, what what happened in the past that allows me to claim hardship.
The hardship of you as the leasee, the owner, that's what you're to explain to us, as to what
It'd be helpful to get the timeline. When did these meetings occur? Who did you have them with? As I understand what you're saying, the exceptional practical difficulty is you were led to believe that you could have a bar and serve liquor. Yes. So can you give us the details on that, the timeline, when you learned what the problem was, what you did about it, who did you meet with?
Yeah, absolutely. So it started in September. I met with Jay Becker. He's my attorney. And Jay, and I said, I've been in the town since 1992. I remember the laws. Like, even though I don't look like I've been here for 1992, I have. But, you know, I know the intention of that law. I remember when all that happened, right?
That law meaning what?
That law being like a restriction of certain square footage. Now, I don't know the exact law, but
Okay,
I
no,
remember some sort, I remember First Street Station lawsuit with Hooters and all that.
Later, yeah.
Okay.
Right? Whatever that was, right, in 98 or whatever. So I instructed my attorney to meet with Matt and to ask, is there any restrictions still on the laws today? I mean, that was 30 years ago. You know, am I allowed to do this? And he was told yes. In October of last year, I believe that was October, we then started talking about conceptually. I was instructed, you know, certain things like I need full menu, I need, you know, I can't just be serving tacos, right? I need an entree, I need soup, right? I need to have full service, right? So I changed my business model, right? I said, okay, let's get a hostess stand. Let's have full service. Every seat in that place, even though the law requires 35, I made all 102 seats full service and complying with liquor law and service law, right? You know, so at that point, when I initially designed this, it did not have a bar in it.
Did not have a bar.
Did not have a bar in it. And so, you know, just talking to community was like, man, you really should look into that. And so I did. We redesigned the building when we were told we could, and we had meetings, probably maybe 6, 7 meetings with the city, with Matt, with Ann, with other, you know, people who are part of this. And
Did that show that there would be a bar?
absolutely.
And when was that now?
That would have been October.
October 2023.
Yeah.
2023.
And based on those discussions, you know, I wind up moving forward with a lease, right? Because, you know, I mean, again, I don't want to get into how a restaurant runs because that's not the case. But, you know, we run on super tight margins, especially when you have $300,000 in lease. Like, right, that's a lot. You have to sell a lot of tacos to pay for a $300,000 lease. So, you know, once we did, you know, we got, I'm going to say approval, but not approval, right? When we thought we could move forward in the business model that we had designed, right? And we put revenue models together and all the financial side of it. Then we moved into the phase of working with my landlord to negotiate a lease. There's not much negotiating, just so you know.
So just, if I can ask you to clarify, you have presented 2 different business plans to the city. The first one was in September, and then you redesigned it in October. Am I
I
misunderstanding?
never
or what?
submitted the one without the bar. That was our first conceptual, like when I was doing it on graph paper, right? Like, you know, how would it flow? You know, so originally it was going to be more of, I'm going to say Chipotle style, but much nicer, right? Like, but let's just say Chipotle style, where you walk in, you order, you sit down in a nice dining room, and someone runs your food, right? Once we discussed liquor laws, service model, all that, then we put a bar in, we changed our service model, we put like controlled access for counter service, we put a hostess stand in, right, into the floor plan of what we finally submitted. I believe we've officially probably submitted that right around the beginning of January, the official submittal of plans somewhere in right around that first week of January, if I'm
Can
not
you give us a summary of when you ran the 2 different models financially, non-alcohol with alcohol? I mean, what did that, just summarize that for us as to.
Yes. So what we were looking at is without alcohol, you know, I couldn't cover the lease service. I didn't feel like we could generate enough revenue with that. So what I had sort of designed is a smaller space with a smaller kitchen and putting 2 tenant spaces in, so I control that whole area and I have the ability to sublease. So I would have probably have done a small taco place, right? That's only $150,000 in rent, and then taken the other space and either subleased it or had done another concept, right? That was part of my due diligence of how I conceptualized being able to cover this. Again, I've had that lease of this space since 1992. So, you know, it was, and my lease did terminate December 31st of this year.
Okay, and you chose the alcohol to meet the lease payment. You know, that's what I'm trying to get at in my mind is, okay, if you had 2 food places without alcohol, could you have made the profit to cover the lease versus now 1 with alcohol is needed to cover the lease plus profit, whatever, versus a large restaurant with no alcohol?
Well, yeah, in the fact that we put in a much different kitchen, right? Like I put in like a full service, like industrial kitchen. You know, it's a $500,000 kitchen sitting down there right now. Versus I could, the first floor, this is all first floor, right? So when I changed the business model off of a smaller space, well, you have to be able to facilitate the service of that larger space, right? So we put in a 14-foot hood, you know, I mean, like we really built, it's beautiful. The other thing is an opportunity I had to put a Chick-fil-A there. So Chick-fil-A had come to me about subleasing the space and would have given me percentage rent on Chick-fil-A, right? You know, well, I'm a business guy, and that was could have been very lucrative, but I like to have control of what we do. And to tell you the truth, I didn't think Chick-fil-A would serve the community quite like what I think we put together. I mean, it really is a beautiful space, and you know, my interior designers did a fabulous job on it. And when you walk by and you see the door, I mean, it is the best looking place on all of Rehoboth Boardwalk, right? It's just, can we serve liquor or not?
So when did you find out about the issue under 270-19?
That was 4 weeks ago, maybe. 4 weeks ago.
Tell us how that happened.
So I'm a financial consultant. That's like my day job. And I was in Long Island, New York with one of my clients. And I got a call stating that there was a problem.
Got a call from
From whom?
From Matt Janis, yes, sir. And so I got a call that there was a problem. And I could give you the exact date if you want it, but
just a general point.
it was, I know it was a Monday, and that there was a problem, and he's like, you know, I'd like to meet with you as soon as possible, right? I believe I was in New York until Wednesday, and then he and I either met Wednesday or Thursday, immediate that call. And again, we mutually worked through it, like, you know, like, hey, these are the steps you have to take, right? I mean, was I upset? Obviously, right? But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Like, I have to go through the chain that makes sense for us, you know? So, so that was, I believe that was 4 weeks ago. I was supposed to have a permit of compliance hearing last Friday. That was required for my liquor license. So I've already got, like, my liquor license has already been approved or at the end stages of approval with the state, but you guys would have to approve them for me to actually get it. So that was about 4 weeks ago. At that point, we decided that the permit compliance hearing had to be canceled because this was required for me to have that. That would then, you guys, like, approving me to have the liquor license because I have everything in line that's needed. So that was Friday. We canceled that on Friday.
Can I ask a question, Bill?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm going back So when Jay Becker, I'm sorry, when Jay Becker met with the city, did he propose the restaurant serving alcohol, or did he propose a taco stand on the boardwalk
So.
in October of '23?
So he talked to them about alcohol.
Okay, and that
Because-
was October of '23.
Yeah, because there was no
thank you.
reason for Jay to talk to him about a
Exactly.
restaurant.
No, I know
Like,
that. I know that. I'm just confirming. I just want to get this on the record.
Yes.
I'm confirming. I'm just not happy.
That was before you signed the lease, when Jay Becker
was-
talked to the city.
Yes, ma'am.
And Matt, what was it that triggered your contacting him 4 weeks ago?
The trigger was the application for the permit of compliance. Remember that we can have a restaurant here. It's the permission to serve the alcoholic beverages, which triggered, wait a minute, we already have an occupancy up there serving alcohol. This code now applies. So it's I guess, the domino effect at that point.
And why, I guess I'm confused why he was told he was okay in the first place.
I would have to go back through and recall the conversations, but I don't believe that code came to light during those meetings.
Mr. Frankus, it might have been a good idea to bring some, not to get all Judge Judy on you, but to bring some witnesses like Mr. Becker, who could have testified as to what was said.
So I need to speak up about a couple things. I don't think there's any factual dispute about those matters, about what happened. But before I go any further, Jay Becker's name's been mentioned a couple of times, and Jay Becker is a principal in the firm that I work for. So I have to apologize. I was not aware of that. I take it that Jay is not here representing you today and is not representing you in this application, right? Do you have ongoing matters that Jay is representing you over
Well,
presently?
he said it was a conflict of interest because of you sitting on the board. So he couldn't represent me today. And he didn't feel like he could be a witness without representation. So I requested that of him.
You okay with that? Fran?
And I apologize. I didn't know. I mean, he's my liquor lawyer, and I didn't know this. Like, I thought he was going to be here representing me, obviously.
I didn't know that was a term.
I didn't either.
My liquor lawyer.
Oh, a lot of people we know probably have them.
No, that's
I'm being facetious. I'm being
Well,
an area.
getting a liquor license is
Yeah.
harder than you think.
No, I know, I do know that.
So really, then we have a little bit of a dilemma here. So we have different options available to us. I mean, once his name was mentioned, I hadn't said anything. I'd gotten quiet. So I guess the board can consider whether it would like me to be involved in this any further. I have to make a determination as to whether I have an actual conflict or a apparent conflict. And I think if I have an apparent conflict, I can indicate to you whether I think it renders me biased in some way, shape, or form. So,
Would that only be if you advised us on anything? I mean,
well,
if you just sit here,
Yeah, but
We may need to ask him
yeah, I was gonna say,
something.
I think we got an issue.
I think we have huge issues.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll play lawyer here for a minute. We have an issue.
Yes.
I'd like to be able to ask our counsel, and we may have to get different counsel, how much we need to consider the reliance on counsel when an applicant comes before us who has relied on knowledgeable counsel. I think we do need to hear from Mr. Becker. Because your exceptional practical difficulty, I believe, is you relied on counsel and relied on his discussions with the city, and that's why you're here today, a week before you want to open.
I mean, I believe, I just believe that's just sort of not that anyone in this room's disputing my testimony, but it was just proactivity on my part. I don't think it's, I mean, in my view, it's not necessary that him meeting with the city had any difference than me meeting with the city. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so, I mean, I could almost take him out of that story in the fact that it was just a proactivity on my part of trying to ensure that before I signed something that could be very detrimental to my family if I wasn't able to produce a profitable business within this lease space,
Yeah.
so I could do it.
Exceptional-
So I believe that I have the exact same testimony, and
Understood, but the fact that you did rely on experienced counsel could be a factor in determining that you've shown exceptional practical difficulty. You need to show that in order to be able to meet the standards here.
yes.
And I would like to be able to ask the board's counsel, which I can't ask Fred, how much can we consider that? What are the consequences of both relying on counsel and frankly relying on the building inspector, meetings with the building inspector? As a general matter, a mistake of law is not a defense. You can say as a general lawyer, I'm not a Delaware zoning lawyer, but generally, mistake of law is not a defense. You're generally charged with, just like I went to the zoning rules myself on my iPad, you're charged with doing that. And now I would not have necessarily known to look at it if somebody hadn't told me to look at 270-19. So I've got a lot of questions that I'd like to be able to ask, and I'm the lawyer here, so I would think others would want to. I don't know how we go ahead.
Well, could I ask a question? I was going to, as I've been listening to this, and I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a relatively sensible person, and I think if we need to either stop, I mean, is the Board of Adjustment allowed to have a conference with their own attorney that's not in public? Because I think, I'm a very, very uncomfortable.
Oh, well, we could go into executive session.
Well, I would prefer to go into executive session because I really think, I'm just extremely uncomfortable about everything I've heard.
But the question is, he's sitting here with the season about to start. I don't think we should ask him to come back in a month.
Well, no, we'd have to do it
So,
soon.
no, we may not be able, in my view, we may not be able to rule today.
Right.
Because I think we do have questions and I'm not sure if Fred can answer them. So I think one of the things we need to consider is whether we'd have an extraordinary meeting soon with substitute counsel, who, because there are obviously other zoning lawyers who can advise us that we may.
But they would need time to prepare.
Yes, right, which may be, it could be a week.
Well, Memorial Day's a week from today.
I understand he may open without a liquor license.
Right.
And, that I just don't know what we can do, but I don't know how much we should be considering mistake of law in a extraordinary practical difficulty.
But if there was a mistake in law that then caused him to generate a self-imposed exceptional practical difficulty, which we do not acknowledge, you cannot create your own exceptional
No, but
practical
if you are
difficulty, right?
told, just theoretical.
Right.
You're
Yeah, this is all
told-
theoretical.
Yeah, you're told you can.
Proceed forward.
Yeah, you're told mistakenly that the setback is 6 feet and 6 feet on both sides. You're not told about the 10 foot. And you go and build the house within the 6 to 10 foot, and it's there, and you were told that was okay.
Right.
And that's wrong. You come to us and say, I was told that the setback was 6 feet on the left, 6 feet on the right. I was never told had to add up to 16. What do we then do? Normally, if somebody is not been told by the city, you say you have to be, you've got to look at the law. If you said, I actually sat down with somebody, not in Rehoboth, some other town. I sat down with the building inspector in Smyrna, and she told me it was okay, and I built it. can we take that into account? And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Could I make a motion that we go into executive session with our attorney to discuss this? Would that be appropriate?
To discuss the,
To discuss
the
this
issue
whole-
of apparent conflict of interest.
To parent, a conflict of interest, apparent conflict of interest.
Can we use the adjacent room? And once again, I apologize to everybody, including the applicant, the audience, and staff. Well, I've got some responsibility for knowing that beforehand, so. So what do we have? Do we have a motion
need
and
a
a second?
I'll
Yeah.
second.
Okay. We'll take,
So you-
10, 15-minute.
No
to
object,
vote?
no objection?
No
No
objection.
objection.
Okay, so.
We can leave everything here, I guess.
now.
Okay, as counsel to the board, I have a real brief statement to make, and that is that, you know, due to the relationship that,
You need to take a vote to come out of executive.
oh, thank you, yes, so.
I
so-
move, do I,
So just a quick statement. The board went into executive session to consider legal advice that arose, or the need for which arose during the course of the meeting. So that's a permissible basis for going into executive session. And we adjourned the meeting to go into executive session, and now we need a vote to return to open session and terminate or end the executive session.
Motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Ann.
Okay.
Okay, and due to Hudson Jones's relationship with the applicant, it is incumbent upon me under these circumstances to recuse myself from further involvement in this application. I'm going to step down from my seat, and I think the chairman can describe briefly as what might ensue.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Yeah,
Thank you, Fred.
We're going to continue this discussion for questions for Matt and for yourself. And at that point, we're going to adjourn the meeting and we'll set a new meeting date, hopefully as quickly. And then we'll get legal counsel. But we're going to continue right now with questions, and then we're going to adjourn the meeting and have another date set up. So,
Barry, I just want to add that it is not going to be before Memorial Day. Okay. So you can see what a business is like that's not serving alcohol over Memorial Day weekend.
we need new counsel to watch the video for the case to get up to speed, and then we'll continue on from there. So let's continue on with questions. Or do you have any questions for us at this point? Okay, we're going to continue asking questions.
Matt, can you explain to us your memory of the discussions you had with the applicant, with Mr. Becker, with anybody else concerning this facility, both, and clarify to the extent you can remember, whether the discussions included the proposal that they would be serving liquor, which I gather from the applicant's testimony earlier arose not right at the beginning, but sometime in the fall of 2023.
Yeah, I recall a couple meetings for a restaurant application. And it was a standard kind of review at that point. I don't recall if there was alcohol present at that time or not. It was just a standard kind of briefing, if you will, from a meeting perspective. I don't believe that even floor plans were presented at that first initial meeting.
And that was in the fall of October or so of 2023?
I believe it might even have been way before that even, but not positive on the dates. I actually tried to look up in my calendars to see when that actually occurred, and I was unable to find it. So I might just take another moment to look again for Jay Becker. But I was actually looking for Mr. Frankis's name and also Baja Bob's. But regardless, I don't recall if alcohol was presented at that time. It was a restaurant application. Jay is very familiar with our procedures here. So we touched base with him about, the necessary requirements of floor plans, fire marshal, all that stuff. If he was going for a liquor license, he would have to do the permanent compliance.
So you do think that you did mention that to him, if they were going for a liquor license?
Definitely. If we met for a restaurant and we knew that the intent, or even if we don't know the intent is for liquor service, we still guide the applicant down knowing we've got to take care of this permanent compliance before you can officially sell liquor in the city of Rehoboth Beach.
and Matt, when you say we, would that be just you alone, or would you be you and Corey, or
No.
some others, members of your staff, or how do you?
Usually the meeting occurs with Ann Womack, the city secretary, and myself, and sometimes there is another individual, be it the city manager, be it our solicitor, Usually that's who attends those meetings.
And do you remember whether anybody else was there with you?
I
from the
can't
city?
recall.
Okay,
But you can't recall the meeting, is what you said.
Correct.
Okay.
okay. And then what further meetings can you recall concerning this application?
Definitely some conversations here and there, about timing, application process, kind of standard lines of questioning when involved with a building permit.
Okay, and then when did the issue of 270-19, the maximum size of 2,500 square foot limitation, when did that first come up?
So that actually came to light during the reporting for permit of compliance.
Okay, and when was that?
That would have been when Mr. Frankus submitted approximately 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, for the actual application for the permit of compliance.
Okay, and did, I assume, are you generally familiar with 270-19?
Generally.
And in the earlier discussions before 4 weeks ago, that issue did not come up?
It did not.
In your discussions with Mr. Becker, the applicant, or anyone else?
Excuse me. No, and as a matter of fact, Ms. Womack actually brought it to my attention because she remembered the incident at First Street Station. So that was all at the same time of the permit compliance application.
Okay, and explain to us, once Ms. Womack raised that with you, what steps did you take?
And so obviously then I contacted the applicant. I said, we may have an issue here. I'm going to have to, according to this code section, I'm going to have to send you for a Board of Adjustment application because right now I can't permit a restaurant that serves alcohol to occupy that much space into the same building.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And that was the phone call that the applicant mentioned then,
Correct.
when he was out of town, and then you met soon after that?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
probably a day, maybe 2 days after that, but it
Right.
was directly after.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Francis, what will the relationship be between the two restaurants, if any at all?
Other than like ownership, partial like ownership, there's no relationship.
None, okay, and the access to above the dunes is right next to this entrance. There's going to be no, that's emergency exit, right? People do not,
That's a fire egress,
Okay.
so it's a controlled
Make
access
sure.
point.
okay, so they're not going to be connected, happy hours, anything along?
No, they aren't
Okay.
allowed to.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, other questions? Jan, do you have any at this point? Edie?
The only thing I would ask Matt is, Matt, was there anybody else involved in the conversation other than people who've already been mentioned in the conversation directly related to the lack of or presence of a liquor license necessity?
It would have been the normal standard people that attend those permanent,
Who
I
are
call
those
them.
people? We don't know.
He said.
Again, it's typically Ann and I, and then occasionally there might be solicitor, occasionally there might be a city manager. I believe that this was probably just Ann and I, but I'm trying to search my records to see.
And does Ann not take notes from those meetings?
Usually not if they're kickoff meetings per se. If they're just to try to help guide the applicant to, what end game they're trying to get to, usually no notes are taken at that time.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to just go back through, just briefly, to make sure we're all on the same page, the timeline that we started before our executive session and have now talked about. So from I'm using what the applicant said. So he said that in September, he talked to his attorney, Jay Becker, and his liquor lawyer, as he said, and you had an initial plan at that point. Is it? Yes. And then just now, Matt has said that he thinks he recalls a meeting, in quotes, before October. So that would be that same timeline. So Jay Becker met with the city met with Matt, and you were not involved?
I was not present.
Okay. So it would have been Jay and maybe Ann and maybe, I know we're not actual here, we're trying to figure it out. We're all a little in the aura stage. So it would have been probably September? Is that what you meant, Matt, when you said probably before October?
Yeah, I'm searching my records here, I'm
Sure,
searching
sure.
my calendar. Nothing is coming up, so it might have just been a quick passing phone call with Jay. Just him calling me at the office randomly saying, hey, I got this, and this. Can you tell me this, and this? Which kind of happens on a daily basis,
Sure.
you know?
So back to the applicant, but your feeling is that you had talked to your attorney and that he then was contacted in some way, whether it was a physical meeting or a phone call or a Zoom or whatever, with Matt, and you thought you had a go-ahead.
If it was October of '23 is what I have him saying, October.
Well,
No,
he
his first
met,
meeting was September, he said.
yeah, that was with Jay.
Yeah.
Right,
Jay,
so
though.
Jay does not represent me in any other matter except liquor license.
Oh, so-
Period. Like, he didn't help me get my business, it's a restaurant.
he did
I
not help
don't
you
need a
with-
lawyer.
With this property then, you're saying?
No, because I've had it under lease for years. I mean, Jay helped me with my liquor license. He's not my attorney helped me with my liquor license 18 years ago, Jay.
Okay.
And it's the only thing he helped, that's the only thing he advises me
Okay,
or represents me
so
with.
let's get back to the timeline if I can, please. So we've talked about, you talked to Jay in September, and now I think you just said that you felt that he talked to Matt. But you're saying
He
Jay
responded back
wouldn't
to
have,
me.
Jay wouldn't have represented you in this matter. Did I misunderstand what
He
you
wouldn't
just
have
said?
represented me in any other aspect of this matter except liquor law, because that's what he does, right? So I would have no reason for having Jay Becker reach out to Matt for any other reason but to say to him, hey, we were reviewing the code and we need clarity. Do they have a right for a liquor license with only a permit of compliance necessary?
So is your understanding that that's what Jay did?
100%, that's my
That's what,
understanding.
so you feel
Yes.
that Jay reached out to Matt about that, probably end of September or early October or something like that?
In the phone, yeah.
And then, and you had said earlier that in your initial plan had no bar in it. And when you said some people said, hey, bar would be a good thing, you know, and so then you came up with a more formal plan, and you said that you actually submitted it in January. But now there are a few months in there, and I'm trying to understand if there was any other contact between you and Jay, you and Matt, other people on your entourage or say on Matt's entourage. I mean, I don't understand
So when
that.
I stated previously there was no bar, that was back like before last summer. So when I was in the initial planning stages, right? So I knew I was not renewing
The lease.
the lease for the arcade. I knew the building needed something. And at that time, I hired an architect, and I was in talks with Chick-fil-A about taking the space and doing a small taco concept, right? Like, I just feel like it's going to be really a neat concept on the boardwalk. So that's how, when I say early, I had never met with the city quite at that point, right?
Okay.
Like, I was still brainstorming. Right, getting input, you know, talking to Chick-fil-A. I went as far as to talk to corporate Chick-fil-A, on them giving rights to remote spaces and all that, right? It never went even far enough for me to take it to my landlord, though. But
Sure.
again, it was in talk. So I developed a concept, a brand, and I had sort of, all right, what am I doing with this 3,600 square feet? So that's that, right? Then I said, well, hey, it would be neat if we could do like a small bar area in there. That's when I reached out to Jay.
And that's September.
That would have been September.
September,
Right? Yes.
okay.
And that's when I reached out to Jay and said, hey, you know, can you look into the laws for me? I mean, that's what you do, right? You call them and be like, hey, I seem to remember some type of law that sort of restrict lit licenses in the city, and I can't remember, is it a building, is it a square foot requirement? Because I always remember there was a 5,000 square foot requirement of size, right? Because Green Turtle, I have the variance on the size of my restaurant's 6,200, clearly above the 5,000. So that's what I reached out to Jay for. I said, hey, I just need understanding. Then he came back to me, and then as part of my review, Matt required me to meet with them. And in my recollection, it was just Ann and Matt. I don't think I've ever met with any other.
When was that?
So I'm guessing that might have been October, November-ish, right? Because I'm like, now I have my plans, right? I'm taking it to Matt, getting feedback. Like, that's how we do it.
Jay told you you were okay to proceed with
That's right.
alcohol, okay?
And you're meeting with Matt.
And Matt
If you've already hired Jay, you've decided you're having a liquor license.
Yeah, so at that point, when we were told that it was going to be fine without any type of variance, because I would have applied for the variance right away at that point, right? Like, if I would have said, hey, no, you need a variance, we would have been like, okay, a variance.
Was the word variance used in your,
Well,
any of your
I-
discussions, or how did that
Well,
come up?
yeah, because I know if any law within Rehoboth would have not allowed me to have a liquor license as proposed, that I would have needed a variance, because I've already went through it once. Like, I do understand that process. So I was aware of that.
So
Right.
neither Jay nor Matt said anything about needing a variance until you got the call from Matt 4 weeks ago? Is that a fair?
That's correct. Yeah, no, actually opposite. I'm pretty sure I, have correspondence that says that no variance was required, right?
Correspondence from,
From the
From
city?
Jay, I'm not as sure about Matt, I'd have to look. But what we do, what we did talk about significantly throughout the process is my permit of compliance. Right? So there was an understanding that a liquor license was being sought. Right? There was an understanding that no variance was needed because I can't go for my permit of compliance without my variance. And I applied for my permit of compliance with the city.
And that's
right?
where you're discussing the menu and all of that?
Yeah, all the menu. I mean, it's very detailed. There's
Code-
a checklist. It's
So the code's understood in those meetings, of course. I mean, it's stating the obvious, okay?
Yes, yes. So, so as an applicant, where I thought, I mean, if I'm talking about permanent compliance and I'm filling out all my paperwork, and they wouldn't even allow me to, submit for my permit of compliance without my building license issued to me, right? So just think of this. I have to go and I have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars before I'm even know that I'm supposed to build it or allowed to build it. I'm sorry, allowed to build it. It doesn't make sense, right? And I had conveyed this to Matt, and it was like, this is the process. Well, you got to follow the process, right? So we are in great discussion. I mean, like I said, we've met probably 5 to 7 times, let's just call it, through this process, and many phone calls. And so, it was very, very clear that variance was not required. We had been way past that. Like, we're on buildings, we have my building permit was issued to me as designed. Full review was done, and we were going towards permit of compliance, not variance. So it was clearly understood, or perceived to be understood, that there was no variance required by all parties. Because, why would you allow me to do a permit of compliance if a variance was required? You wouldn't.
And you submitted that in January? Was that what you were saying, your official, when you were going through your timeline earlier, you said your official submission to the city, was that the permit compliance application, or was that something else?
That was all my requirements for my building permit.
For your building permit?
So
Okay, thank you.
December, we were supposed to, but you know how Christmas is, and so we wind up, I believe it was January 8th that was the first opportunity after the holidays for us to meet. And again, that was an additional review for everything. And then at that point we went through and he lays out for me like, hey, you have to get fire marshal approval. You got to submit to the Board of Health, but that's not required for me, right? Like, I mean, electrical, this, like, so, you know, it's laid out exactly what we have to do. And it's, you know, to try to make it, you know, so I know, because I don't know the law, but he's doing it to help me, you know, get through the system. The process, thank you. So
There was no misunderstanding, Matt, that this was going to be in the same building as Above the Dunes, right?
Correct.
So, just to, it sounds like it just simply focus on this, the city building office simply did not focus on the applicability of 270-19. Is that a fair?
That's a fair assumption, yeah.
Fair, not assumption, fair.
Assessment.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what's interesting though is in the restaurant code that we review in our meetings, the restaurant code has 270.19 in it. Like, how don't we have that? Like, how could we testify that 270.19 didn't come up when I did a full restaurant review in person several times prior to January 8th when I filed for my building permit? It's part of the code. Like, we reviewed line by line my requirements multiple times.
How does that cut then? You're saying that 270-19 is in front of you and everybody else, and nobody is looking to see what the words say?
No, we read it. We discussed it. Like, I mean, it was part of my lawyer focused on it.
So
You
you had
was told that you did not need a
A
variance.
variance, right?
So you had another attorney?
No, Jay Becker.
He's the liquor attorney.
Oh, okay.
So in September, when I met with Jay, again, the only reason I retained Jay was because of the liquor license. I went to his office and we sat down and we pulled out the restaurant code and we read it together. And I said, does this pertain to me? Right? Like, is this something that I should be worried about? And if so,
And he said-
I want to.
And he said yes, because it's 270-19A, which is restaurants with liquor.
To tell you the truth, he wasn't fully aware on how to interpret it. And that's why I said, well, we need to reach out to the city. That meeting ended by me stating to Jay, you must reach out to the city, right? We got to figure this out, because I don't want to proceed this way when I have to go this way, right? And from that day forward, the assumption was always made that was not, this hearing that we're sitting in today was not required, right? Up until 4 weeks ago.
No, but how do you read the sum of the floor space devoted to the permanent seating dining area and bar area in any building shall not exceed 2,500 square feet, except where there's a hotel, and for you to conclude, or anybody else to conclude, that it doesn't apply? I'm trying to understand what the misinterpretation could have been then.
Yeah, so we went as far as defining building, right? Is that lease space? I mean, again, this was great communication on this. This isn't something that was like, 1 minute was spent. Right?
No, you started going to say something that you went to the question as to what building meant?
Yeah, I mean, and we discussed, like, not Matt, Janice, and Bob Frankus, but collectively, and maybe throughout the process we did, right? again, this was something because, again, I didn't even know if the law was still enforced, right, or still enacted, or whatever happens to laws if they're not used anymore.
They stay forever.
Yeah, they just stay forever, right? Well, so that was the process. I mean, again, it wasn't one meeting, and it wasn't one call, and it wasn't it's like something that was just like a side note. Like, again, part of the process for building review, which I think is important to know, is that part of that process, I have to have all my plans. I have checklists. I'm given all this paperwork. And part of that review is the code for restaurants and liquor service. It's just part of your process. I mean, that's how I get my permit to move forward. Yeah.
Oh, continue, please.
No, so, I mean, so again, it was, and then when I was, was given the building permit, right, and I paid for my building permit, it sort of just went away. Like, you don't think of it anymore, right, until it's an issue.
Okay.
No.
All right. Other questions, Bill? Jan? Edie?
I have one. Is there a reason you're not represented today? Not by Jay, but by someone? Is there, did you make a concerted decision to, it's not for or against anything that's happened here. It's just a question I have.
So it's funny. I did reach out to another attorney who was sort of, I don't know if there's like this unwritten law that they don't want to take on someone else's case.
I don't know.
We're not,
But
Bill can speak to that.
But there was apprehension, right?
but you did
And
ask.
so that was one. And then two was, I'm not here to defend myself in any other way but just what happened, right? Like, I don't think I need a lawyer to do that, like, because I'm speaking honestly, and what I'm saying is the truth, right? And I'm not disputing the law.
Right.
Like, I think the law exists, right? I'm not saying there's two buildings. I'm not trying to make up stuff. I'm like, that's not my intention here. Like, so lawful, I'm like following the law. I just am requesting a variance that can be offered to me or not. So that's, so again, to
Follow
answer
that
your question.
sentence. You're requesting a variance because you think it was somebody else's fault. Right?
Yeah, I'm requesting a variance because it is the
wasn't your
law
fault.
too. Yeah, and at this point, I do believe that, I think 8 months ago, if I sat in front of you, for me to justify how I'd be negatively impacted if you didn't award it to me, I think I ought to have a hard case, right? Like, you can do other things. You can only take half the space. You could do this. Like, I would have a harder case. But today, if you walk up there, it looks like I'm about to serve you a taco,
Clear on your argument,
Yes.
Mark, Edie, any other questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, we're going to keep, I came back here and said we're going to keep this open, but I am going to ask the board, is anyone wanting to make a motion here after hearing Mr. Frankis's questions?
Does anybody from the public have anything to say?
Well, no, before I go to that,
Oh,
I just wanted to add, because I was going to move to that after the open
okay.
discussion.
Oh,
But
no, I don't have anything to say.
Okay, so,
That we close the public.
I want to
we
ask,
have-
I want to ask the public, and I want to probably leave it at that. We're going to continue right at this point, but I want to ask, while you're here, if you have anything to speak. Okay, I'm going to.
And who signs her in?
I guess I have to swear her in.
Yes, you do.
See if I can remember.
It's an opinion, so do I need to be
Yeah,
sworn in to make this
your
opinion?
name, please.
Okay, Carolyn Diefendorfer, I'm a city resident.
Okay, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Did I get it right? That I can ask,
I'm gonna
okay.
need her address. You need her-
Oh, and your address, thank you,
113 Newcastle Street.
thank you.
Okay, so as I sit back and listen to this, first, I think what they're doing on the boardwalk is a huge improvement over an arcade. Hearing about the possibility of Chick-fil-A, I think it's a huge improvement over a Chick-fil-A on the boardwalk. I think one of the things that I would point out is Above the Dunes is a great restaurant, love their food, love their service. It's not handicap accessible. This restaurant would be handicap accessible. So I think that is one thing that I think is a huge improvement over, other things that, over a restaurant without alcohol service. I think the handicap accessible people have a right to a beverage with their meal. That would be one thing. The other thing is, I'm not sure I understand why a hotel gets more square footage. And if I don't know the logic behind that, but if you compared them to a hotel, it's 85 feet square feet is all that's over when compared to a hotel that can have more. So to me, that is something to consider. So, thank you.
Thank you for your input. Okay, and no motion, so at this point, we're going to suspend, what's the adjourn? We're going to continue this case. Continue this case, and we will adjourn the meeting today. Thank you, and hopefully the dates, we're looking for June 5th or 6th. Get the meeting room and get everyone,
That's everybody expedited for your.
yes.
Is that something you can deal with?
Well, just, I still have my permit of compliance, which is scheduled for June 10th. So I was told that they won't schedule my permit of compliance unless I have my variance. So I would probably ask if there was some type of request that they would make public notice for my permit of compliance, just in case. I've already paid for it. I mean, I paid my permit of compliance fee.
Yeah, I want to hear,
that is-
I want to hear Ann on it. Is it you okay, Ann, on those, if there's a conflict with those dates for public notice?
The earliest that he can get in for a permit of compliance hearing is June 10th.
Okay.
And if we're on the 5th or 6th, then
And we would be okay if we met on the 5th or 6th and he could get in?
Well, yours is a continuation,
Mm-hmm.
so it would only be an agenda item.
Okay.
The permit of compliance, I have to advertise.
Post, right. Okay. All right, thanks, Ann.
And I just wanted, I know Fred has recused himself, but just purely for technical reasons, we're okay? Like adjourning and everything?
I think
and
we're-
continuing?
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I.
Okay, thank you for coming today, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for your
And
time.
then I would receive something in the mail, for that 5th or 6th.
we'll let you know when the date,
You'll just-
we will let you know what the date is, absolutely.
Okay.
Shortly, very shortly. Before
I
Memorial Day.
appreciate you
Right.
guys. I know it was a long afternoon.
Thank you.
I do appreciate it.
We were here till 9 o'clock one night. Just ask Ann.
Short one.